My beloved child, before you scroll away, listen carefully, because there is something about your soulmate that you were never supposed to hear this clearly. Two people who are close to them have been watching this connection from the outside, and their opinion of you is not what you might expect. In fact, one of them said something about you that made your soulmate stop and think for a long moment. They noticed the way you carry yourself, the way you remain composed when you could easily react, and most importantly, the way your presence seems to affect your soulmate even when you are not around. These two friends have seen enough to recognize something your soulmate has been trying to understand privately. They have noticed that your soulmate does not speak about you like they speak about everyone else. There is hesitation. There is emotion. There is a strange softness whenever your name comes up. And one of those friends finally asked the question your soulmate had been avoiding: why do you care so much about this person? That question opened a conversation your soulmate was not prepared for. Because suddenly, they had to explain something they had been keeping buried beneath excuses, distance, and silence. They tried to make it sound simple. They said they were just confused. They said they needed time. They said they were trying to move forward. But their friends were not convinced. They had already seen the contradiction. Someone who has truly moved on does not keep returning to the same memories. Someone who feels nothing does not become quiet when a certain name is mentioned. And someone who has completely let go does not keep wondering what could have happened if they had been brave enough to choose differently. Here is where the story becomes much more surprising. Those two friends do not simply think you are attractive, interesting, or memorable. They think you are very different from the person your soulmate originally believed you to be. One of them sees you as someone unusually difficult to replace. The other sees you as someone your soulmate underestimated. And that difference matters, because your soulmate may have once created an image of you in their mind based on assumptions, incomplete information, or moments taken out of context. They thought they understood you. They thought they knew what you wanted. They thought they could predict how you would react. But time has revealed something completely different. Your silence did not mean weakness. Your distance did not mean indifference. Your patience did not mean you had nothing to say. And your ability to keep moving forward did not mean you stopped caring. Those two friends have noticed this transformation from the outside, and now they are beginning to challenge your soulmate's old perception of you. One of them apparently believes you possess a quality that is becoming increasingly rare: emotional depth without constantly demanding attention. The other believes your soulmate may have realized your value only after experiencing what life feels like without your presence. And that realization is uncomfortable because it forces your soulmate to confront a question they cannot easily escape: what if the person I thought I could lose was actually the person I was never supposed to take for granted? That question has been sitting quietly in their mind. It has been growing every time something reminds them of you. A song. A place. A familiar phrase. A random moment during the day. Something small can suddenly bring the entire connection back into focus. And according to the way these friends see it, your soulmate is beginning to understand that the strongest connections are not always the loudest ones. Sometimes they are the ones that remain present long after the conversation has ended. But there is another layer you need to hear, because this is where the two friends disagree. One friend believes your soulmate should stop overthinking and simply tell you the truth. The other believes your soulmate is still afraid of what your answer might be. Think about that carefully. It is not necessarily the fear of rejection alone. It may be the fear of discovering that you have already changed, that you have already healed from the uncertainty, or that you no longer see them the same way. Your soulmate may be wondering whether the door they once left uncertain is still open. And this is exactly why those two friends have become important to the story. They are seeing the situation from a perspective your soulmate cannot access because they are emotionally involved. They can see the hesitation. They can see the repeated return to the same subject. They can see the difference between what your soulmate says and what their behavior reveals. One friend reportedly thinks you are very emotionally intelligent. The other thinks you are very difficult to fool. And that second observation may be the one that has your soulmate thinking the hardest. Because if you are as perceptive as they believe you are, then your soulmate knows they cannot approach you with half-truths or vague explanations. They would have to be genuine. They would have to acknowledge what happened. They would have to explain why they pulled away, why they hesitated, and why your connection still occupies a place in their thoughts. And perhaps the most emotional part is this. Those friends may have realized that your soulmate does not actually want a replacement for you. They want resolution with you. They want to understand what went wrong. They want to know whether the connection they tried to suppress was actually pointing towards something they were not emotionally ready to face. That is why their opinion of you has become so significant. They are not simply talking about you. They are talking about what you represent in your soulmate's life. And now, my beloved child, comes the part that may completely change how you hear the title of this story. The two friends may think you are very special, but one of them has gone even further. They believe you are the person who made your soulmate realize something about themselves. Not because you forced them to change, but because your presence exposed parts of them they had been avoiding. Around you, they could not hide behind the same excuses. They could not pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. They could not easily dismiss their own feelings. And that is why your soulmate's reaction to you has been so complicated. You did not simply enter their life and become another memory. You became a mirror. You showed them what they valued, what they feared, what they wanted, and what they were not ready to admit. Their friends have noticed this. They have watched your soulmate become thoughtful after mentioning you. They have noticed the sudden change in expression, the pause before answering, the way certain memories are never described casually. And one friend has reached a conclusion that your soulmate may still be struggling to accept. You are not someone they can simply categorize as the past. You left an emotional imprint that time alone has not erased. But here is the question that remains unanswered, and it is the question you must stay with, because the next revelation goes much deeper. If these two friends already see you this differently, what exactly have they discovered about your soulmate's feelings toward you that your soulmate has not yet been brave enough to say out loud? That is where everything begins to shift. Something changed in the way your soulmate talks about you, and their two friends noticed it before your soulmate even realized it themselves. At first, the conversation was casual. Your name came up naturally, almost like an ordinary subject, but then everything became quieter. One friend looked at your soulmate and asked a simple question, if you really feel nothing anymore, why do you still remember so much? That question landed differently. Your soulmate did not have an immediate answer. They looked away, paused, and tried to move the conversation somewhere else, but the friends did not let it disappear that easily. They had already noticed the pattern. Whenever someone mentions moving on, your soulmate becomes distant. Whenever an old memory appears, their expression changes. Whenever they hear something that reminds them of you, they become unusually thoughtful. And one of those friends finally said what your soulmate may have secretly feared: you didn't lose interest. You lost certainty. That sentence stayed with them. Because perhaps that is what has been happening all along. Your soulmate may not have stopped caring. They simply became uncertain about what to do with feelings they could not neatly explain. Their friends now believe you are very emotionally powerful, not because you control anyone, but because your presence awakened something genuine inside your soulmate. You made them question their own choices. You made them look back at moments they once dismissed. You made them wonder whether the connection was worth more than they allowed themselves to believe. And now one of those friends has started seeing you as the person your soulmate never truly finished understanding. Then came the observation that changed everything. One friend apparently believes you are very rare because you did not chase your soulmate endlessly for answers. You allowed space. You continued living your life. You did not constantly demand explanations. And from the outside, that made your soulmate's behavior look even more revealing. Because the less you tried to force anything, the more your soulmate began thinking about you on their own. That friend noticed something important: your soulmate was not being pulled toward you by pressure. They were being pulled by memory, curiosity, and unfinished emotion. The second friend had a different perspective. They believe you are very difficult to replace because you connected with a part of your soulmate that most people never reached. They remember how your soulmate behaved around you. They remember the conversations, the little details, the moments when your soulmate seemed more open than usual. And now they are comparing those memories with the connections your soulmate has experienced since then. That comparison may be uncomfortable, because sometimes you do not realize the value of something until you encounter situations that remind you exactly what is missing. Your soulmate may have tried to convince themselves that everything would become easier with time. Instead, time gave them more perspective. They started recognizing the difference between temporary attention and genuine emotional connection. They began realizing that not every person leaves the same kind of impression. And that is why the two friends have such a strong opinion of you now. They are not judging you from one isolated moment. They are judging the entire pattern they have witnessed. And the pattern keeps pointing back to the same conclusion: your soulmate has not emotionally placed you where they claim they have. But there is something even more personal that one of these friends discovered. Your soulmate may have been protecting your image in conversations without realizing it. When someone questioned why things did not work between you, they could have easily blamed you. They could have listed your flaws. They could have made themselves look completely innocent. Instead, they became defensive whenever someone spoke unfairly about you. That detail caught their friend's attention immediately. Why protect someone you supposedly no longer care about? Why become uncomfortable when someone misunderstands them? Why remember their good qualities so clearly while claiming the connection should remain in the past? Your soulmate may not have noticed that their reactions were revealing more than their words. Their friends did. One of them now thinks you are very misunderstood. The other believes your soulmate misunderstood you first. And that realization may be the beginning of a major emotional shift. Because once someone recognizes that their original judgment was incomplete, they begin revisiting every important moment through a different lens. Suddenly, an old conversation sounds different. A goodbye feels different. A period of silence carries a different meaning. A decision that once seemed logical starts feeling questionable. Your soulmate may be replaying moments in their mind and asking themselves whether they reacted too quickly, whether they allowed pride to speak louder than emotion, or whether they walked away from something they were not mature enough to understand at the time. Their friends cannot answer those questions for them. But they can see the struggle. They can see that your soulmate's story about you is changing. And when someone changes the way they describe a person, it often means their feelings about that person are changing too. Now listen closely, because the final thing one friend said may explain why your soulmate has been acting so differently lately. They said, maybe you are not missing them because you want the past back. Maybe you are missing them because you finally understand what they meant to you. That sentence created a silence neither friend rushed to fill. Your soulmate had nowhere to hide behind casual explanations anymore. Because there is a difference between missing a memory and missing a person. A memory can fade. A person can become a lesson. But sometimes the deeper realization is that the connection changed you. Your soulmate may be discovering that you were not simply someone who entered their life and left. You became part of their emotional history in a way that still influences how they understand love, trust, closeness, and vulnerability. And those two friends have noticed it. They think you are very significant to your soulmate, not because of some fantasy, but because your absence has revealed the weight of your presence. Yet there is one question still hanging over everything. If your soulmate's closest friends already believe they know how deeply this connection affected them, why has your soulmate still not told you the full truth? The answer may be hidden in the one thing they are most afraid you will say when they finally open up. The silence after that conversation did not end the story, it actually made everything more intense. Your soulmate went quiet, but their two friends could tell that something had shifted inside them. They had touched a subject your soulmate usually avoided, and now the thoughts could not simply be pushed aside. One friend asked, "What would you say if they were standing in front of you right now?" Your soulmate apparently had an answer in their heart, but not in their voice. They imagined seeing you again, imagined the first few seconds, imagined the look on your face, and then came the realization that frightened them most. They did not know whether you would still recognize the person they had become. Their friends noticed that hesitation. One of them believes you are very perceptive. They think you would notice immediately if your soulmate approached you without sincerity. The other friend thinks you are very emotionally strong because you survived the uncertainty without allowing it to define you. And that is exactly what makes this connection so complicated. Your soulmate may have expected you to remain emotionally stuck in the same place, waiting for an explanation. Instead, you continued forward. You became harder to read. You became quieter. You became less available to the old version of the connection. And now your soulmate is wondering whether the opportunity to explain everything has already passed. Their friends keep reminding them that if they truly want clarity, they cannot keep hiding behind hesitation. But your soulmate has one concern they have not admitted openly: what if you no longer need the answer? That question has been following them because their friends have started noticing something else. Your soulmate is no longer only remembering what happened between you, they are imagining what could have happened differently. They remember moments where they could have spoken honestly but stayed silent. They remember opportunities where they could have chosen understanding instead of assumption. They remember moments when you may have needed reassurance and they gave you uncertainty instead. And now those memories have a completely different emotional weight. One friend thinks you are very valuable because you gave more understanding than you received. The other thinks your soulmate is finally recognizing how much patience they once took for granted. Neither friend is telling your soulmate to romanticize the past. Instead, they are encouraging them to be honest about it. And honesty is difficult when someone realizes that they may have contributed to the distance they now regret. Your soulmate may have spent a long time telling themselves that circumstances were responsible, that timing was wrong, that everything simply happened naturally. But their friends are asking harder questions. What if the real issue was fear? What if your soulmate was afraid of how serious the connection could become? What if they felt something stronger than they expected and responded by creating distance instead of moving closer? These possibilities are now being examined with a level of honesty that did not exist before. And there is one detail that keeps returning to the conversation: you never needed to prove your worth as much as your soulmate needed to understand it. That realization is slowly changing the way they remember you. Then came the moment when one friend described you in a way your soulmate could not ignore. They said you were the kind of person people understand too late. Your soulmate did not laugh. They did not dismiss it. They simply became quiet. Because somewhere inside, that sentence connected with everything they had been feeling. They remembered the things they once considered ordinary about you. The way you listened, the way you noticed small details, the way you could sense when something was wrong even when nothing was said. At the time, those qualities may have felt normal because they were always there. Now, distance has made them visible. Your soulmate may be realizing that what they once considered ordinary was actually part of what made the connection so meaningful. Their friends have also noticed that your soulmate compares new experiences with old memories more often than they admit. Not necessarily because every new person is being judged against you, but because certain emotional qualities keep reminding them of what they experienced with you. And that is why their friends believe you are very difficult to forget. You were not simply memorable because of one dramatic moment. You became memorable through hundreds of small moments that accumulated quietly. A conversation. A look. A shared understanding. A moment when you knew what they were feeling before they explained it. Those details become powerful when someone finally has enough distance to appreciate them. Your soulmate may now be looking backward with a completely different level of maturity, and what they see is not the person they once thought you were. They see someone deeper, stronger, and far more significant than they understood. But the biggest revelation is still ahead, because one of those friends believes your soulmate is not actually afraid of talking to you. They are afraid of what talking to you might awaken. They know that one honest conversation could bring back emotions they have spent months trying to organize. They know they cannot casually approach you and pretend nothing happened. They would have to acknowledge the complicated parts. They would have to admit that you mattered more than they showed. They would have